Coming up on the show today, Zambia inflation jumps to 18-year high. IMF signs a 3-year extended credit facility with DRC. And Zimbabwe publishes penalties to fight currency profiteering in the country. It's the last one for the week. Welcome to Business Incorporated on Channels Television. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ini John Mekwa. And before we give you details of those stories, let's see how the markets performed at intraday. We begin on the African continent, where it was mostly negative. Kenya lost a huge chunk of its market index. When it closed on Thursday, it shed 2.17%. At intraday, however, Egypt's all-share index was down 1.23% and Nigeria's index was down 0.22%. The only positive at intraday was South Africa's JSE, which added 0.26%. It was also mixed sentiment in the Middle East. Let's start off with the good parts. The Qatari index added 1.28%, while Saudi Arabia less than that, 0.46% to be precise. In the United Arab Emirates, Dubai was down 0.31% and Abu Dhabi shed 0.25%. Well, you saw Conrad earlier. He's been standing by to give us updates in the market. European market advanced on Friday to notch record highs as global stocks take heart from strong economic data out of the U.S. Hello, Conrad. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nidhi. The weather in Germany is still a bit cold, but thank God it's Friday.
Thank God it's Friday anyways. So economic confidence across the Eurozone has hit a 3-year high as optimism over the recovery from the pandemic rises. How are investors reacting to this?
Well, look at what the German share index DAX is doing today. It's on the rise. So, of course, this is a piece of positive news that this index of economic sentiment in the Eurozone has risen so significantly. It's not very far away from the latest peak, which dates back to the year 2017. Of course, this is only one positive factor giving the market support on this last trading day of the week. Another one is that the 750 billion euro COVID-19 recovery fund set up by the European Union has taken an enormous step forward, as now all 27 member states of the European Union have ratified the legislation needed for this fund. That means that now governments can start spending. And last but not least, last factor that is giving the market support is the enormous budget by the US President Joe Biden. He too will spend a lot of money on the economy in America.
All right. So the German market seems to be treading water on this last trading day of the week. Conrad, wrap up the week for us. What has it been like for traders in Frankfurt, and what's the mood for next week? What was the outlook for that?
Well, compared to last week, the German DAX is only a couple of points higher. It's pretty much unchanged. But traders are not unhappy about this. They say that in the course of this week, the German index reached a new record high, and this while at the same time it was reported at the beginning of this week that Germany's economy slipped into a recession again during the first quarter. So this was not negative news enough to pull the market down, and that's positive, of course. Also, the factors I just mentioned, a lot of government spending in both Europe and in the United States. This is something to be optimistic about, and this is something that should give the market more support in the days to come.
And several European airlines were blocked by Russian authorities to land in Moscow. Behind this seems to be the political fight over Belarus. What's going on?
Well, all this has to do with new sanctions imposed onto Belarus. You know, after the government in Belarus last Sunday forced a Ryanair flight to land in the Belarusian capital of Minsk so that the authorities in Belarus were able to arrest an opposition activist who was on this flight. The girlfriend of this opposition activist was also arrested. This not only made many Western European politicians very angry, including the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the chief of the European Union's Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, but it also caused the European Union to impose sanctions on Belarus. Among them, one sanction is that Western European airlines are banned from flying over Belarus, which means that Belarus won't get the money it usually gets when an airplane flies over it. Now, Moscow is, of course, an ally of Belarus, and yesterday when two planes, an Air France flight and an Austrian Airlines flight with destination Moscow wanted to start, the authorities in Moscow forbid these airplanes to land in Moscow because they had implemented this rule that they should not fly over Belarus. It really looks like a tit-for-tat game is about to start here, but a tit-for-tat game is likely to be lost rather by Russia and Belarus and not so much by the European Union.
All right, we'll watch and follow up that story as the days unfold. Thank you so much, Conrad. And thank God it's Friday once again. Enjoy your weekend. So we move over now to London, where Juliana is standing by to give us updates from the UK. Hello, Juliana. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Innie.
Yeah, so the FTSE 100 opened higher today, Juliana. Is it still high?
It is still high. It looks like we're going to be going into the bank holiday weekend in positive territory. It opened up pretty positive and it's held on to those gains at intraday. First of all, I think those US jobless numbers, which had reduced, definitely buoyed global markets and it hit the square mile too. But then we just got a little bit of breaking news before the intraday numbers was out, and that's that the UK health authorities have given the green light to the Johnson & Johnson one-dose COVID-19 vaccination. I believe it's called Janssen. The British Health Secretary has ordered 30 million doses, and this comes at a time where about 25 million UK adults have received 2 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine. Over 30 million people have received 1 dose. Really positive news. Of course, Britain still kind of leading the way when it comes to making sure its population are inoculated. And now we've got that scare about the Indian variant, which I will be discussing on Channels Business Global later today. The fact that we've got more doses coming into British shores is a positive story and has buoyed the market. So the FTSE All-Share at intraday is up by 0.23%. The FTSE 100 is up by 0.20%, and the FTSE 250 is up by 0.28%. In the currencies market, the British pound is down against the US dollar by 0.14%, down against the euro by 0.08%, and down against the Japanese yen by 0.12%, Innie.
All right, Juliana, so I guess this is another sure footing towards June the 21st. But anyways, from next year, car and home insurance renewal quotes may be cheaper than those offered to new customers. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, this is an interesting story. The business headlines here say loyalty penalty for insurance comes to an end. And basically, what's been happening is that if you are with an insurance firm for over several years, then you may not realise that you're actually being charged more. Your premiums go up every single year. There's a term that it's called price walking. So even though you may not have claimed on your insurance and you may be a pretty safe driver or you're keeping your household items safe, your insurance company can be charging you much more. This has been legal, but several customers over the past few years have been complaining, particularly during the pandemic, where so many people were much worse off. And now the city regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, have come in and they've put a ban on this. So now, especially for our viewers in the UK, if they're listening, when when you are going to renew your car or home insurance next year, your insurance company can no longer increase your premiums if you haven't claimed. So this is a pretty big story. In fact, so big, Aviva, their share price rose by 2.3%. I believe their investors were pretty happy with that, as well as Direct Line. Their shares rose by about 3.1%, putting an end to what they call loyalty penalty here in the UK.
Great news. Well, government plans to spend £45 million on citywide systems and other technologies to reduce carbon output. What's the spending plan for this money, if you know?
Yeah. As you said, Innie, this is all about reducing emissions by 2050. And the government, I've got to say, this week, they've been pretty good with releasing all these press details ahead of G7 and ahead of COP26, where Britain is really going to be at the forefront of the main stage. First time they've actually been at the forefront post-Brexit and, of course, post-pandemic. So they want to make sure they're crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And they are really doing this as much as they can with the climate emergency. About a third of all emissions here in the UK come from heating homes. And so what the government are planning on doing now is investing these money into heat networks. So any heat that is trapped from burning fossils in factories and in incinerator plants are now going to be captured by these heat networks, and they can be used to cool or warm offices, homes and other buildings across the country. I believe they're going to be trialling out these heat networks in various areas across South London and other areas across England. But of course, you know, this is a fantastic thing to do, especially because they've got environmentalists breathing down their neck, making sure that all of the waste that's coming from these factories is being used. And they want to use this heat in the best way possible to make sure homes in London are warmer.
Well, the world needs that, not just London. Well, thank you so much, Juliana. And thank God it's Friday.
Oh, thank God it's Friday.
Well, moving over now, stocks in Asia Pacific mostly rose in Friday's trade as investors reacted to the market debut of JD Logistics in Hong Kong. Shares of JD Logistics opened at 46.05 Hong Kong dollars before surging to more than 18% from their issue price at one point. The broader Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong gained 0.11% as of its final hour of trading. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 jumped 2.1% to close at 29,149.41, while the Topix Index advanced 1.91% to 1,947.44. South Korea's Kospi urged 0.73% higher to end the trading day at 3,188.73. Mainland Chinese markets lagged as they closed lower, with the Shanghai Composite declining 0.22% to 3,600.78, while the Shenzhen Component dipped 0.29% to 14,852.88. Elsewhere in Australia, the S&P AX 200 rose 1.19% to close at 7,179.50. MCSI Broadest Index of Asia Pacific shares outside Japan gained 0.4%. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we have more stories for you from the African continent. You're welcome back. It's still Business Incorporated on Channels Television. The United Nations World Tourism Organization has declared May as a month of tourism and African gastronomy with the theme Gastronomy, a New Image of Africa. The Tourism Organization believes that through the history of humanity, food has always been an essential aspect of a community's life, where strangers, friends, and family members gather, share stories, create memories, and even make history. However, gastronomy is much more than food. It's the beautiful connection between culture, people, and food. Elsia Grancourt is a Director of Regional Department for Africa UNWTO, joins us to expatiate on this idea. Hello, Elsia. You're welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Amy. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Good to have you too. Well, why is this important at this time when the world is grappling to recover from the pandemic blow and vaccine seems to be the hottest topic?
Well, I think we all experienced that 2020 was the worst year for tourism. And now we are looking towards the recovery of the sector. And I think it's important that we continue to push forward what are the reasons that makes people travel. And one of the areas that is very central to the work that we do is the 10-point plan agenda that we have for the Department of Africa, and whereby is covered underneath on the theme of advocating brand Africa. And gastronomy is one of these key products that, as you mentioned earlier, it helps to keep and bring forward our tradition, our cultural heritage. And recently you have seen that couscous has been inscribed in the UNESCO's intangible heritage. So why not use this moment to continue to promote and make more known the African gastronomy, which we see more and more is gaining its prominence in the international arena.
And African gastronomy is made up of all the influences of thousands of ethnicity, environment, traditions. Where is the melting point in the midst of these thousands of, everything?
I think our gastronomy already, as you say, it's a melting pot from the different spices that we use and the different dishes that cuts across the continent. If you are in West Africa, what you will enjoy, for example, is different from what you will enjoy on another part of the continent if you go downwards towards Southern Africa. But there are common threads that we share within the gastronomy. And I think it's more and more critical for us to bring forward, because we know that when people travel, one thing that is at the center of it will be food, music, and the people. And this is why we wanted to use this opportunity to help to continue to promote this, as I mentioned, and bring it to the fore. That's why in the publication that we just recently launched, we've featured several chefs from around the continent, including your very own chef from Nigeria. If I may just say here, it's Chef Semira Ajayi that is featured in this book. A publication, a tour of the African gastronomy. So there we see not only the chefs, but also the ingredients that are common in the different dishes that is featured in this book. And as you mentioned, we use this month to really push forward through various webinars where we've been talking to the chefs that are featured in this book. But we not talk only about the image of Africa, but we touched on several areas. What about from the farm to the table, looking at how this covers the entire tourism value chain, but as well as looking at training, the training aspect, the education aspect of it, and as well as the role of women also in this sector.
Well, revenue is also very important. So what are the revenue avenues in this for, like the chef, like you mentioned, and also the countries involved?
Countries that are involved are cut across the continent because, as you know, we work with the various member states from Africa. So in this book, we've featured over 38 different countries, as I mentioned, from the north, south, west, east of Africa, including the islands as well. And not only the specific dishes that they wanted to bring to the fore, but as I mentioned, also sharing the different ingredients that is used in the different culinary dishes throughout the continent.
All right. Thank you so much, Elsie, for sharing this time with us. And, well, enjoy the food and the culture and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank you.
All right. So moving on now, Zambia inflation accelerated to an 18-year high in May as the cost of meat and fish pushed up food prices. Consumer prices rose 23.2% from a year earlier compared with 22.7% in April. Costs increased 2% in the month. Annual food inflation quickened to 28.5% in May from 27.2% in the earlier month. And in Zimbabwe, The Zimbabwean president has published penalties for companies and individuals to prevent what the government describes as profiteering from selling hard currency it makes available at auctions. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe will issue fines to companies and individuals in an effort to discourage them from profiteering. A fine of up to $1 million Zimbabwe dollar, or an amount equivalent to the value of the foreign currency obtained, will be imposed. And in Uganda, the self-acclaimed Uganda wastepreneur Faith Aweko saw an opportunity to turn plastic waste into fashionable pieces. She began collecting bits of discarded waste and turning them into durable and sustainable handbags. The bags sell for between $16 and $25 online to customers in Germany, the US, Holland, and others. Aweko is a graduate of the Social Innovation Academy.
Kampala, Uganda's capital, churns out 1,000 tons of garbage per day, according to the East Africa country's National Environment Management Authority. Most of it ends up littering the city, clogging vital sewage and drainage systems, causing flooding and creating unfavorable sanitation conditions. But what many see as trash was viewed as a solution-based business opportunity by entrepreneur Faith Aweko. Aweko and her employees turned plastic waste from sites like the well-known Katizi landfill site into fashionable handbags. As a young girl, Aweko often came up against the harmful effects of the plastic that littered the low-income area she lived in.
I grew up from one of the slum areas here in Uganda, that is Nagurugo Down. And every time it could rain, my family and our neighborhood would think of disposing of our plastic. And most times in the night, either we spend the whole night draining water out of our houses, or like in the morning, it was hard to go to school because walking in the floods, having a wet uniform and wet books wasn't really a good experience. So I had to miss school many times.
Aweko and her Reform Africa team regularly collect, wash and hang out discarded plastic bags from Kampala's dump sites. She says the jobs and positive effect on the environment she's creating more than make up for all the hard work and criticism she sometimes encounters.
Well, just before we let you go, we'll tell you about the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has completed policy discussions and reached a staff-level agreement with a 3-year program with the Democratic Republic of Congo. The agreement comes under the Extended Credit Facility arrangement to help the country recover from the pandemic, preserve macroeconomic stability, and advance the reform momentum to raise and sustain inclusive growth in the Republic of Congo. And that's the much we can take on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ini John Mekwa.